Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode for a number of reasons. Number one, it's a Thursday episode, so all of you know that this is another amazing interview. As you've been listening to this podcast now for 4.5 years, over 200 interviews at this point, you know that I only bring on people that have a powerful story to share, the lessons that they learned, and how it can improve your life and your business. And the other reason why I'm excited about today's episode is because the topic of discussion is value proposition, or value prop, as it's known in the coaching and consulting world. And for those of you that are listening to this, you may A, not really know what value proposition is, or B, you're familiar with it, but you want to learn a little more deeply about it. So that's why I have with us today Jose Palomino, who is an expert in this field, the people that he coaches, the consulting that he does, everything that is instilled, but also impacted in what he does for a business is all about the value proposition. But we're also going to create that connection between the value prop of yourself, but also those things that you provide, whether it's a product, good, service, or a program. So with that behind us, Jose, welcome to today's episode.
Well, great to be here, Scott. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. So before we jump into all the value prop stuff and all the amazing content that we're going to go over, if you could rewind the tape and kind of go back, I don't want to say to the very beginning, but what do you feel in your journey that you're still currently on? Because we all still are on the same journey. It's just at different points and different stages. What would you say for you was the pivotal moment, or that aha moment, or that catalytic moment that has set you on this path that you're now currently on?
Oh, actually, it's interesting you mentioned it, because I could think very distinctly. This was Javits Center, a big trade show conference for technology companies, and I was doing business development for a market research firm. This is about 20 years ago, and I represented the company, and I had arranged a meeting with one of our expert analysts, with the VP of running a $2 billion line of business for a major computer technology company. And so my job was to bring them together, and they're talking strategy and stuff. And my analyst was maybe, and nothing, I mean, I think you could be young and bright, but he was, let's say, very young and quite bright, but I think he has like 2 years out of college, and he's advising this person with this $2 billion line of business. And I'm sitting there feeling like I have something to say, but it wasn't my role. It would have been kind of like the butler on Downton Abbey offering family advice during dinner. It would have been very inappropriate. It just wasn't my role. I was biz dev. And in that moment, it clicked for me. It says, I got to be in the role where I'm giving the advice. I can't be in this context. And that led to a journey of a couple of years that led me to start my company, Value Prop, at this point, about 17 years ago.
Now, there's so many things that we can dive into, but from that experience that opened the door, so to speak, to everything that you're doing now, being on the other side of it, obviously going from being at a trade show to obviously now doing what you're doing with the coaching and consulting, when you were spending time on the other side before doing what you're doing now, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you learned in the business world, in the working world for someone else, that you were able to then carry over into the coaching and consulting that you're doing now, that has really made you stand out, made you different, but also has helped the other people that you're working with?
Yeah, often being involved in companies that maybe were not the clear number one, but the number two position in their industry. These are big companies, but they weren't the number one position. So you always had to answer the question, why you? Why you? Because if you're, so for example, I did a significant stint, which is when I got into sales for a company called Tandem Computers. Doesn't exist anymore. It's been absorbed into Hewlett Packard a long time ago. But they were one of the at the forefront of what's called fault tolerant computing, computers that would never fail. Today, we take for granted that most things are pretty reliable, 99.99%. But in the early days of computing, that wasn't the case. And we competed with IBM, Digital Equipment, Unisys. Those are our competition, bigger names. So we had to always answer the question, why Tandem in that particular example, right? Or in the market research firm that I was in was number two to another very large, well-known firm. Why us, not them? So that question, why us, not them, was really inculcated in me in all my both the sales support, moving into sales roles, marketing roles, and always why us, not them. Sharpening that became something of kind of built in, like rewiring my DNA, how I looked at the world, how I looked at what I did was around that question. And that is the essential question that even today, a big, Apple has to answer that question. But if you're number two or you're number three, you really have to sharpen your answer to that question. Or if you're a small company trying to just get a foothold in an industry, you're not going to be number one. You're a $10 million, manufacturer or something. You're not aiming to knock out Caterpillar. You still have to answer that question. Why us, not them? Why us now? Why us at this price? All those questions were woven into my thinking and became actually the foundational thinking behind my starting my own firm.
It's the what makes us different, what makes us stand out. And it's that differentiating factor between us and everyone else. And, it's interesting because no matter how young or old we are, no matter how young or old our company is, no matter how young or old an industry is, the same things need to be figured out. And this is such an interesting thing to kind of land on. Evolution is obviously something that always happens. It's always here. But in the same, there's always foundational things that need to be figured out. That's why, the coaching and consulting world is always going to be thriving, because no matter how successful or how unsuccessful someone or a company is, there's always a reason why they may not be where they want to be, but there's always a next level that they're looking to get to. And it sometimes takes that set of external eyes, that 10,000 foot view that we talk about in coaching, that allows us to kind of see, a crack in the foundation, a bottleneck in the business. Something that my wife and I always talk about is you can't see the label from inside the jar.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that there's a lot of people that are just spending too much time in the jar, not on the outside, where they can see what's going on. So for all the years that you've been in business, why do you feel, or where do you see the business world going as far as the advancements in technology, the world of AI, and how that's been so impactful on companies, individuals, industries? Where do you see all that going in the future?
Wow, you're not throwing the easy questions my way, so that's good. So this is this is the future of business as we know it. But I have an opinion on it. I mean, I do. One thing that I always anchor my thinking on is that, at least for the foreseeable, maybe not for my grandkids or my great grandkids, but for anybody in business now in the next 20 years, business and everything around it is still about people. It's still, if you look at all these issues with supply chain issues, one of the bigger challenges wasn't just the supply chain, which is labor shortages, being able to get the number of people necessary to do the things that needed to be done. And you could talk about automating those people out of jobs, so to speak, and that is happening in some markets, especially where the pricing doesn't make sense anymore from a business model point of view. So, get used to kiosk at every fast food place from now on, right? I mean, that's it. And they're talking about, robot, burger flipping in the back room, right? So you're going to have like two people just making sure people don't steal the burgers. I mean, that's about it. That's happening. But the reality is still a people business. So business still needs to be done between humans that connect at some level. That still is a big part of it. There's still something about saying, I need to trust the person I'm talking to. I need to believe the things they're telling me are true. Now, of course, we now have much more information in the buying cycle much earlier than ever before in the history of ever, right? So people are 70, 80% down the buying process before they start talking to potential vendors. They're very much more educated. They're asking tougher questions. So I'd say on the other side, if you're going to do business where you sell or market anything, be ready to continually up your game to add value at every level. You can no longer show up and just be a walking brochure. They've already gotten past that. They checked out your website. They know your specs as well as you do. So you start having to answer, I think, better questions. Like, how will this solution, not how does it work? How does our printing, I don't know, our new office printer work, multifunction office printer work, but how will it make you money? For example, how will it help you downstream? Even more so, more profoundly, how will it help your customers make money? So people are starting to look at the value equation in multiple stages. It's not just, what do I get out of it? I have to give you money to get your service, but how am I going to use your service to benefit my customers? So I think people are getting more, have to get more strategic in their thinking, more multi-dimensional, so to speak. I don't mean everything's four-dimensional chess, but I do mean you have to think it through a little bit more than ever before. Now, the stuff you've mentioned, like AI and automation and so on, clearly that will change things in labor markets. Even things that we thought were untouchable, like writing. You look, what GBT, with the ability to create articles and some pretty amazing stuff downstream. So you start thinking about people who thought they were secure as content developers. They're thinking, maybe I'm not so secure in there. But there's still going to be human factors in that, because it's still about behavior. It's still about people's preferences. And again, I say generationally, that will start changing as people figure out, well, we can design algorithms to track that with greater and greater granularity. And eventually we'll be able to tell you what you want before you know what you want. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but it's going to happen inevitably. But I think there's still a range of time now where you could still create value just by not forgetting that you ultimately serve people. And if you serve them well, serve them honestly, serve them with integrity, create value for them, always think about, how else can I help my clients, my customers? I believe there's always going to be an opportunity for you to grow and to prosper.
It's a great segue into value proposition, because the value of what you bring to the marketplace and what you have to offer is everything. So before we go into what makes you different as far as value prop, why don't you explain to the audience a little bit exactly what value proposition is, and how that is defined for either on the business side of things, whether you're running a company or corporation, but also on the individual entrepreneur side, like a coach or a consultant.
Sure. And there's a couple of ways to slice it. And over the years, I've done it different ways at different times, depending on the circumstance. But I like to start with the highest level definition. First of all, it's not a tagline. And so when I design value propositions with clients, I never focus on poetry or making it sound great. People think you have to come up with like, just do it, or the real thing, or something like that. So those are taglines. And taglines done right capture the essence of your value proposition, but they are not your value proposition. Your value proposition is when you have clarity on how you create value for your best customers in a way that should matter to them. Now, that's a really important thought, because you can say, well, we do all these great things for our customers. The real acid test is, yes, but do those great things matter? So for example, I worked with a contract manufacturer for a couple of years, helping them get their sales and marketing up to snuff. And they were very proud of the value added engineering they did for their customers. They said, people come to us sometimes with a complex challenge, and we solve it for them. Then we manufacture the part for them. And I asked them a simple question: has anyone ever paid you for that value added engineering? He said, well, no, not really. I said, would they pay you? And I said, no, I don't think so. They'd hire an engineering firm for that. So here you think you're adding value, and that's why you think they're doing business with you. But the fact is, they wouldn't pay you a dime for it. Maybe it's not as valuable as you think, or it's not the value they're looking to from you. So it's really important that you think about, how do we create value for our customers? And it's only value if it's valuable to the customer. We sometimes, especially in technology categories, I see this a lot with software companies throughout the years. And a lot of my earlier part of my career was all in like software and technology. And people inside the room where the stuff is being developed, so to speak, right? They're all excited about, look at these features, and we got this, and look at the charting and the instant graphing and all of that. I said, well, does anyone know the customer wants any of that? And of course, we've gotten better at it. We do minimum viable products now, and things like that get tested earlier and so on. But again, it comes down to the essential thought. Value proposition is what you do that's valuable to your customer that makes them have a preference to do business with you. Now, you can do something that's valuable, but it's the same thing that all your competitors do in the same way. It won't create a preference. It'll put you at one of three, one of four. If you say, well, we paint houses and we use Benjamin Moore paint, and we use ladders, and we're licensed and we're insured. Okay. So far, you haven't told me anything that any other responsible painting company wouldn't say as well. If you say we guarantee our work, we guarantee our time. If we promise you it'll be done in 3 days, it'll be done in 3 days, or your money back. I'm not saying you could afford to make that promise, but let's say you did. Now you've created value. You've taken risk off the table for me as a homeowner, and you've made it much more valuable. Now, you asked the second part there, Scott, and I don't know if it's okay if I segue into personal value proposition here. So as we enter the world now, and you see this, and especially anyone who's hiring people now is seeing this, they're hearing a lot more about what the employee wants. So you have employees say, I'm not going to go back to the office. I just don't feel like it. I'm not going to. And so I talk to owners, and they go, what are we going to do? The world's turned upside down. Well, part of it is you kind of have to get over that. Like, that's just the market you compete. You thought you were just competing to sell your wares. Now you're also competing to sell your job. Now, that may change as the economy tightens or whatever. So things can always happen. But you as an individual, you have to say, okay, how do I add value with the people I come into contact with? That has personal implications. What kind of person are you at home? What kind of, and I'm not saying that we should have everything be on a virtual P&L. What kind of husband am I? Did I gain 10 husband points today? Because that's a crazy way to live. No, but just generally, I think if you go into the world and say, you know what, I want my interactions to be positive. I want to be a helpful person. I want to be an honest person. So that is going to translate at home, but it's also going to translate into how I do my job. I'm going to be an honest person. Says I'm going to, if I'm being paid 9 to 5, I'm going to be ready to work at 9. I'm not going to show up at 9:05 with the bagel and coffee and take half an hour to set up. And so I'm not adding value then. And then I'm always the first one out at 4:59. I mean, I understand sometimes a job is just a job, but I've always had the philosophy that if I always operate like this job was actually my career, even the lowliest job, that when I do get the bigger opportunities, I don't have to gear up to another gear, because you don't know if you have that gear until you test it. I just always operate on that gear. And I think if you go around that way, so when we deal with customers, when we deal with our coworkers, are we always just trying to be helpful? And, I think it even comes down, Scott, sometimes to a simple thing is like, don't be a jerk. And there are people that really could use that lesson in life. Like, why are you like that at work? Why are you that snippy person? Does that add value to your life? Does it make you any happier? Mostly doesn't. And if you work in an office and everybody knows Larry's the miserable guy, Larry, right? They know that. Does Larry do you want to be known as the miserable guy? I mean, change that. You can change that. And if you're an owner, then, and I'll tell you this, there are definitely toxic owners out there who have a team of 10 or 15 people. And if you ask them, and I know they're usually the most blind on this point, you say, hey, what's the culture? Oh, we have a great culture in our company. Everybody loves working here. Because when I ask them, do you love working here? They all say yes. And I say, well, that's not exactly an accurate test. And then you start talking to the employees and they let their hair down a little bit, and you realize, boy, not so much. So I think there's a big part in this is true as a company, it's true as an individual. When you look at creating value or having a strong value proposition, you need to be willing to validate it with somebody else looking at you and telling you, is this true? You can't think our customers love us because of our customer service. Has anyone ever talked to your customers on your behalf to ask them if that's true? Because you're telling me it's true and you're the owner, you believe it's true. You may have good customer service intentions, but maybe your execution's not so good. So let's find that out. Let's talk to some customers. And if you're a boss Do you really know that your employees enjoy the culture there? Is it the culture you want to have? You need to have some third part. This goes back to the coaching and consulting, but and I'm not, pitching, coaching and consulting, but there is value to that third party person who shows up, who's trained at looking at this. And I think that's the other part. I think the big value, just general, let me just do a little quick shout out on coaching and consulting. Coaching consulting is specialized in something, a category. Let's say it's negotiating certain types of telecommunication contracts, for example. If you're in procurement, you may negotiate one of those every 3 years. If you hire a firm that specializes in that, they're negotiating 3 of those a month. They just have seen more. It doesn't mean they're smarter than you. They just have focused. So that's the value, I think, of bringing people in that way. So anyway, long-winded answer, but just Scott, to get to the heart of it, it really comes down to I think it does come down to some personal decisions about what kind of person you want to be. And it manifests up and down the chain, people who work for me, people I work for, and customers I serve.
So someone that's listened to this episode and they feel that maybe their value proposition is maybe a bottleneck in their business, it's something that they need to address and get help with. That company, that individual, if they want to learn more about you and how you do help people, what's the best way for people to connect with you online and offline?
Sure. Two simple things. One is my company site is valueprop.com. That's VALUEPROP. Describes our programs. There's resources available, blog, podcasts, and so on. So a lot of good stuff there that you just avail yourself of. Sign up for our insider. It's free, and a lot of helpful resources all on this around the area of growth, building on your value. And if you want to talk to me for a little bit, you can go to josepalomino.com. There's a scheduler there, and I'd be happy to, anybody who thinks I can help them, I'd be happy to do so and have a conversation with them.
Awesome. And for all the people that are listening to this episode, all the information that Jose just mentioned, as far as both websites, will be in the description of this episode and the show notes. So you will not have to go too far in order to find it. So I do encourage those that if you are struggling with that value proposition side of your business, do connect with Jose. So Jose, final question before we sign off today. What does success truly mean to you?
Probably two things. One is certainly I want to be able to say at the end of the day that people knew or believed that I lived consistent with what I said my values were. So I want to be a consistent person. And two, most especially, that my family would have said that I was an example for them, especially my children, my grandchildren, and so on. I think those would be the most important things. Far beyond material success and other things. Those would be the important things for me.
Love that. Well, Jose, I appreciate you so much for coming on today and giving such deeper context and meaning to what value proposition is. But, obviously the thoughts and the feelings that you have about the future of business. Just grateful for your connection, and also grateful for you to be on the show today. So thank you again for being here.
My pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much.
So again, to all the listeners, all the information of how to find out and connect with Jose will be in the description of this episode. And please do support us by sharing this out, but also leave us a rating review, whatever you're listening to on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. And don't forget, you can start your official subscription to this podcast, the Networking and Marketing Made Simple podcast subscription. It's $2.99 a month. It unlocks a bonus episode every single Friday for you and you only. So you get 4 bonus episodes every single month for less than $1 a week. So do check it out. The link to do that will be in the description as well. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you everyone for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.